Hello, everybody. We're still the Boob Tube Boys, and we're still talking about Silk Stalkings. That was almost a tongue twister, but I got it out smoothly. I'm your host. I'm Spencer Hendricks. I'm going to tell you all about Silk Stalkings and how, what's his name, Tim Thomerson? I'm going to tell you.
Wait, is that ever his name?
I'm going to tell you how Tim Thomerson looks in those silk stockings, and we're gonna cover so much ground today, and I'm going to need some help doing it. Van, are you excited to talk about Tim Thomerson?
I slit a sheet I slit, upon the slitted sheet I sit.
Wow. So you are excited, is what I'm
very
getting from
excited.
that. Well, that's Van Lee. We've also got Brian Vaughn. Brian Vaughn, who are you most excited to talk about?
Tim Thomerson.
I thought so.
He is sort of a legend in Boob Tube Boys circles. And by that, I mean long before Boob Tube Boys was a podcast. The three of us have watched movies and TV shows together.
More than one. More
Yeah.
than one of the Tim Thomerson thing, I mean.
Tim Thomerson is a guest star in this episode of Silk Stalkings we're about to discuss.
I would argue he's just the star.
He's the star of anything he appears in. He's the silver fox, if you ask me. But we know him
He's
perhaps...
a stud muffin.
Yeah, number one stud muffin. We know him best, of course, for portraying Jack Death in the Trancer series. Also, he was Dollman in Dollman versus the Demonic Toys.
And the subsequent Dollman-related films.
If you see Trancers or Dollman in a title, you're going to see Tim Thomerson.
You're going to see some big old eyebrows that are a different color than the hair.
What color are those eyebrows?
Black.
What color's the hair?
White.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually look. Is he still alive?
I'm pretty sure.
Good for you,
I'll
Tim
look it
Thomerson.
up now, but I am fairly certain.
Last I checked, you can't kill the immortal.
Well, that'd be ironic if he was.
Also, that's on the short list of one of the best names ever. Tim Thomerson.
Tim Thomerson. Sometimes I want to call him Tom Timerson. I had a little bit of
He wouldn't mind. He's laid back about
confusion there. So this one here is season 2, episode 17, Night Games. Official synopsis. A couple finds themselves in big trouble when their bizarre sex games go awry and a man is killed. That's not what you want with your sex games.
Definitely still alive,
Supposed
by the
to
way.
be a
Tim
safe
Thomerson.
word.
Yeah.
Good. I'm super happy for
Will
Tim
you
Thomerson.
Will you email Tim Thomerson and get him on the show?
That's Tim Thomerson at hotmail.biz.
Because Hotmail is the only kind of mail for Tim Thomerson.
He voiced Simulation Cyrus in Saints Row 4, apparently.
Wow. So he's at least doing voice acting work, and he's got a good one.
He has
does.
2 movies that have been announced, Beautiful, Evil, and Bristled. I don't know what they are.
I'm writing those down. I'm gonna have to check that out. Have to see his entire career.
Much like how he starred as Bill Monahan in Good God, Bad Dog.
I'm glad we're getting a bigger glimpse into his Timography.
I have to turn this off because I'll just keep doing this.
Yeah, that's for the best.
Well, let me turn off my browser here. That's the stupidest way to say that ever.
Hit the off switch on Google Fire Chrome.
So, as we've covered here, there's a few different people in this episode. Tim Thomerson is one of them. He's the most important one of them.
Right.
He's Foster Henshaw in this.
A name
That was the last name?
Yes.
Henshaw?
Yeah.
Henshaw.
That's like what I call you stupidly. Make fun of your name.
Every time they went to their house, I put the Henshaw house in my notes. And then we've got his wife,
It's not
Callie
just a house,
Henshaw.
it's a home.
Henshaw Mansion, more likely. That guy's fucking loaded.
Yeah.
So, Callie Henshaw, his wife, is played by Barbara Livin.
Full name Calico.
She has many different names. I don't know. It wasn't that at the time they filmed this episode.
Tina Thomerson, maybe.
But Barbara.
Helen
So
Hunt.
then we've got 2 Bob Johnsons in this episode somehow.
What?
I didn't know who the other one was, but the credits say Robert O'Reilly is Captain Bob Johnson, and then Rex Smith is just Bob Johnson.
I know this. I'll
Who?
tell you what happened. I really don't want to reveal this yet, but there's a
sure
character
there should be 2 Bob Johnsons
in this show.
Yeah.
that is
Well,
even more majestic.
don't reveal that.
I won't. Well, hold on. It'll
Okay.
make sense. He's so majestic. We'll get to him. That I was like, I have to look up who this guy is.
Yeah, he's the best at what he does.
Well, he played a character in this episode, but he played a different character in this show in different episodes.
Yeah.
That was called Captain Bob Johnson. So that is not his character in this episode.
But he was
Gotcha.
brought back to play, let's say, a less on the up and up role this time around.
And let me point out that this is IMDb. It doesn't have this information.
No.
It doesn't have him actually
No.
listed in the episode. It's very weird.
Okay.
It took me digging down.
You have to pay
rabbit
Jeff
hole.
Bezos for IMDb Pro.
Your IMDb, Brian.
To know.
You figure this out.
That was free.
Yeah, it was. A couple other people on this episode. Lee Benton played Francine Rose. She was just in like one scene, but nonetheless, she was a very important part. And then Lana Clarkson played Ula Kurtz. And I didn't know how to spell Ula when I made my notes, so I just guessed and put O-O-L-A.
There's that
It's
one actress who, Ula Chaplin, the granddaughter
is a
of
real
Charlie
name.
Chaplin.
Oh, yes.
And I enjoy watching her act.
Because she's real good at acting.
She's great. She seems fine at acting.
Did you enjoy watching?
I don't know if I've seen her in anything.
Did you enjoy watching Lana Clarkson play Ula Kurtz?
Don't even know who that character is.
Miss Kurtz, the secretary.
Another show we have here of Kurtz.
A pivotal figure.
Okay, yeah.
Kurtz is another. That's a weird name. Yeah, and I spelled it. I was just guessing, but it's Kurtz. Just so you guys know.
They didn't even make an effigy of the character in this one named Kurtz like they did in our last Kurtz.
Are you guys ready to hear about the night games that Foster Henshaw plays with Callie Henshaw?
Night games. It just sounds like some sort of 80s power metal song or maybe a Bob Seger song.
I could see that. It's
Foreigner and Bob Seger have a baby of a band, and that's what they make.
So in the cold open this time, we don't know it yet, but this is Foster Henshaw. All we know at the time is it's an old creepy man at the bar.
Well, that's not what I had. I had the most handsome older man I've ever seen in my life whose arms I'd like wrapped around me. We see him sitting at a bar. The best well-lit bar I've ever seen. It is
it's the middle of the day, yeah.
Yeah, and also this is just not a bar atmosphere.
No. And I thought one of the lines he has when he talks to this lady is great because you can see that the setting is just not what you think.
Just one of the lines?
Yeah, pretty much the whole conversation. So he's eyeing a sexy woman in a red dress. He asks the question to the bartender, who's she? Is she a player? Which I don't really know what that means.
Is she a baller?
It means is she willing to wet your whistle
bone for money
for a pretty penny?
Yeah. I like the way you said it better. It sounds a little bit.
It's the grossest thing I've ever
wet
said.
Your whistle.
So the bartender doesn't know much about her. He says, she likes wild turkey. So he orders her wild turkey. They make eye contact, and that's all it takes.
Yeah.
He approaches, he makes conversation. It quickly turns to business. This sexy red dressed lady, she's like, ask me my sign. What's your sign? I'll have sex with you for money. Something like that.
Very, very subtle.
Something like that.
I think that's like April 15th through June 21st. That's
what that sign is. The "will have sex for money" line. Also, real quick, when he mentions ordering the wild turkey, Tim Thomerson can't help but say, "Send her a gobble. We'll see if she spreads her feathers."
Yes. Yeah, I put he made a wild turkey joke, and I just thought we wouldn't even get into that.
It's so gross.
We did.
If it were anyone who didn't look like they should be president, I would have seriously questioned him saying it.
He's just trying to find out if she's a trancer.
The thing that he
exactly. They don't. That's the subtext.
The thing that he said that made me laugh because it's a funny line to someone in a bar is he's like, "What are you doing the rest of the afternoon?"
It's 2:30 in the afternoon.
Once brunch is over, what are you up to?
just the whole thing is bizarre. But the transaction has been agreed upon, and the next thing we know, she's riding his old white dick.
He's Frasiered his body right out there.
You can see all that white chest hair, blinding white chest hair.
The two of them are the sweatiest two people in history doing
money
this, too.
That he's just tossing over the bed, sticking to the mattress and on her skin.
And her slaps a dollar bill on her.
They're all it's a bunch of dollar bills. They're fucking on $1 bills and having a great time, and that's that.
And you have to assume one of the reasons that Tim Thomerson is so happy is that in this movie, unlike in Dollman, he gets to be a regular-sized person.
So now that we've seen...
Is there a Dollman sex scene where he's the doll-sized?
I don't know.
I bet there is.
We should look into that. And also, if there is, what if he accidentally just went in all the way, like got in there? And then have the Jonah and the whale kind of a deal.
He has to burn his way out.
All right, so now that we've seen his sexing skills, it's time to find out what he does the rest of the day because, this was already at the daytime setting, but he's at his day job and he's an important businessman with his own construction company and he's on the phone screaming at somebody in his fancy office.
It's something about I want that crane operator up on that building. I don't care if he's afraid.
Yeah, that's what my note says. It says Dollman is in his office talking about crane operators.
Well,
It covers it.
He's very important and he's very mean and he's powerful. He gets what he wants. His secretary
Not
enters.
even McNulty can stop him.
This is where we see Ula Kurtz, by the way, Van. His secretary enters to say,
Curtsies on
Mr. Henshaw, your wife is here. And on the way.
What does he say to her, Spencer?
He says, she leaves the room and he says, stop. you have a beautiful, never finishes it or something,
Yeah.
and she just kind of rolls her eyes.
She goes, "Sir, your wife."
Yeah, it was a little bit disturbing.
A little Tim Thomerson creepiness going on there.
He stares at her as she leaves and then tells her he's staring at her on the way out. So Henshaw,
Hey, who can resist a man with a little snow on top?
and everywhere else. I mean, in that sex scene, he's just white.
They dumped
up
snow
and
on
down.
Tim Thomerson.
So it's cobweb stuff you hang up on Halloween. That's what it was.
So Foster and Callie greet excitedly because, as we learn when she comes in the room, Callie is in fact the sex worker he picked up at the bar. That's a big reveal right there. They do this wacky stuff. They're just that kind of couple.
Yeah, they keep it lively.
Yeah, you got to make sure that the marriage doesn't lose its momentum. So they like to play the parts of different people, and they like to play with each other's parts, and that's what they do. They're crazy, they're wild, and I think you guys should be more accepting of it. When they greet excitedly, kissing and talking about all their big plans, you can see how dangerous they are. She's talking about how he almost killed her last time or something like that, and how more is on the way, and they've got big plans for something else coming up here soon as well.
Best night game yet is on the way.
Yeah, so we can see they do this stuff all the time,
Twister.
and they've got more big plans in the future. So now we get to go to the police station and we get more fun Chris and Rita stuff. Rita is busy making dinner plans with the dorky fellow officer. We don't know who he is yet. Chris entered. He's late. His car broke down. There's that whole awkward thing where she says, where have you been? He's like, oh, like car trouble, stuff like that. So Sam introduces the dork, whose name is Bob. Not Captain Bob, apparently, but just regular Bob. Bob leaves, and we learn through dialogue he's a captain. See, that's why I got confused.
No, I think he is Captain Bob, and regular Bob is
regular Bob is regular
the
Bob.
other guy.
I don't know
maybe.
what this thing is you guys are
What
referencing.
other guy?
The other person. Who acts in the show other times.
Named Bob Anderson.
Oh, yes. This Bob Johnson is
Captain Bob.
Captain Bob, who looks like that actor Rob Hubel.
He does,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I like Rob Hubel, too.
Yeah, he's
Funny
he
guy.
seems like a good guy, too, in my, one interview I heard him do.
So Captain Bob is a San Diego Police Department captain. Captain Bob is a San Diego Police Department captain. I love that. I'm going to just remember that I said that forever. And the two met at some forensic conference. I don't know. I couldn't really keep track of the details. It sounded boring. But she knew him
Wasn't
from that.
Sexy at all.
And it sounded like they were making dinner plans, and perhaps Rita's got a new flame. Chris is, they're still doing the hinting thing, so it's unclear whether he's okay with that or not. But there's clearly something going on the side, possibly with Captain Bob and Rita. So let's go back to Henshaw Construction.
Let's, please.
Callie's coming again. The time frame here I'm not clear on, but we're back to the same place, and so is Callie.
I don't think it was in the script, the time frame. I think they're just kind of winging it right now.
In this case, Callie comes in and Foster's not there, and that's up to Ula to tell her. This is so hard to keep track of all these names here because they're just ridiculous. Foster, Ula. Oh, Callie makes sense.
It's better than the first episode where everyone was named of an 80-year-old person's name. Helen, Carol. It was all names like that.
Jack Fellman.
His bump ass.
That's true. That's
that was
a good
in fact
point.
bump ass. Yes.
That's his superhero name.
So in this case, he's not here. So she's passing time with the secretary and the company architect, who's a real interesting guy.
Sure does look like he's eaten someone before.
Yeah, he's a little creepy. We learn a lot more about him later, but for now we just know he's the company architect.
He's nice. It's a choice. It's what I'd like to call an Arkansas mullet, I believe.
Sure.
Yeah, he's not a pleasant looking guy.
Well, I don't know. Again, the time period makes it really tough to see what anyone really looks like.
Well, do you think he knows what Callie looks like? He's staring at her hard enough.
He ought to.
She sits down, breaks her heel. She's working on it, trying to fix that, and he's just leering the whole time. The secretary scowls. Ula's not. She's not a fan of the way that the architect's acting. There's more to this, of course, as we learn later. It makes a lot more sense once you've seen the rest of the episode. So basically, the whole point of this is to set up Foster's return, and then they can go at it in his office. They immediately are fucking, and Foster screams from his room, "Miss Kurtz, hold all calls for 20 minutes.
He knows his
That's
limits.
all it's going to take.
I mean, but he's not a young guy.
No, and he obviously she's got a little more stamina than he does, so he doesn't want to.
He's in very good shape.
He didn't yell that loudly either, so
No,
I think they heard everything.
Yeah. And they were right by the door. The room was right there, and the door was. They didn't go very far, so they're listening to this whole thing. Maybe
Mark likes it.
I was gonna say maybe that's part of the plan. You guys want to go to the Henshaw house?
Definitely.
Henshaw Manor, Henshaw Estate.
Stately Henshaw Manor.
Here we've got sexy Mrs. Henshaw sleeping atop the covers. That's what they all do. They sleep. No one gets under the covers in shows, and it drives me insane.
Well, I mean, how are you supposed to film those bods?
Yeah, you got a good point. She does have like some kind of purple gown over her like crimson colored sheets or something. There's a lot of interesting colors there.
And there's just candles everywhere. And it seems like half of the Silk Stalkings budget went to candles.
What if someone yawned? You could accidentally outstretch your arm and just knock over 7 candles and burn your house down.
Candles can be very impractical that way. Like if I'm talking to myself while I'm trying to light one, I'll just talk right into the candle's flame and blow it right out, and it's super annoying. I have to tell myself to shut up.
Same thing happens when you're talking to a candle.
It just goes right out.
Be my guest. Be my guest.
This is another Lumiere reference.
Lumiere talks.
Oh, s'il vous plaît.
That's exactly what he says. So while she's sleeping atop the covers, a masked man enters through the back door and attacks her. He threatens she's going to get it. It is a slut. Surprise! It's Mr. Henshaw.
That is what he does say.
He says you're going to get it, you slut, like you've never had it before.
We've got more wacky sex surprises here.
He's got his best camo pants on.
They're doing some nice, some dirty talk back and forth here.
I like this even better than the quarterback and the cheerleader.
Oh, God, Foster, you're so exciting to be with. Come on, baby. Come on. Ravish me.
What a great line that definitely married couples say to each other when they're having sex. You're so exciting to be with.
There's a lot to unpack in that one little phrase there.
My favorite part is his laughter at the beginning of that.
Oh, that's great. Tim Thomerson is chomping on the scenery here, and so is the saxophone player in the background.
You can't have a sex scene in CBS shows without a saxophone playing.
This implies that they have played at least once before, and it was a favorite at the time, quarterback and cheerleader, which I'm just going to say it right now. How would you carry off a fantasy where they were in high school at the same time?
It gets a little creepy.
Professor and student, which is a lot creepier, is something they could play conceivably, believably.
I do like that his robber cosplay here is basically dressing up like Steven Seagal, camo pants and like a black blazer. It's very jarring to see.
I wish that they had gone, we've said the word meta a lot. I wish they would have gone really meta and had Tim Thomerson come in as Jack Death, like dressed as Jack Death. Yeah. Oh, Jack, is that you? And in the world of Silk Stalkings, the characters have all seen the Trancers movies.
Because everyone has.
Yeah.
And then Callie's a trancer.
Callie's a trancer, and they're investigating the actual Jack Death.
And then Jack Death fucks McNulty.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, can we get CBS on the phone?
Well, see, I wanted us to write a sitcom, but we just wrote a whole movie. That's even better. So while they're doing their fun sex thing, Callie hears a noise for real, and this is the plot twist. There's actually a masked man in the house. This wasn't just the setup this time. So all we know is that Foster's going out to investigate, and then we hear a gunshot. Callie looks outside. Foster's down. The intruder advances up the stairs toward. At the time, this is so funny because the notes I didn't know she was yet. So I said, intruder advances upstairs toward Henshaw wife. So at this point, of course, Foster comes to and guns him down in cold blood. And the police arrive on the scene. Who do you think arrives on the scene to investigate? Our heroes, Chris and Rita.
Thank God, I missed them already.
Now, of course, the first thing Chris does is make fun of Rita because she is supposed to be on her date with Captain Bob. And instead, she couldn't resist coming to the crime scene. So here's where she reveals, it wasn't actually a date. It turned out to be a job interview, which is actually worse news for Chris. He's not happy about this at all. He doesn't want to lose his beloved partner.
There's something weird about seeing a man be very sad while wearing a pink blazer.
Dressed up like a full-blown clown, like a scamp-type clown.
Chris is dressed like 1991.
Oh, 100%. Teal pants, pink blazer, mosaic tie, the whole 9 yards.
He went to a tailor and said, "Make me look like the Max from Saved by the Bell."
So Chris gets right to questioning Foster. Rita removes the corpse's mask and they figure out it's the architect, Mark.
Which that means they took like 3 hours before they bothered to look at who just died.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be a slow process.
I love that. Lots of conversation before the mask is taken off.
Yeah, they're not sure how or why. What would Mark be doing here? They're stunned. No one really knew him that well though, so they can't give Chris and Rita a whole lot of information on him. They just know that that's somebody who Foster employs at his company, and he, for some reason, broke in wearing a mask there, and they shot him. So Callie does admit she's been getting some obscene phone calls of late, which Foster is furious about. He feels like that's probably something she should have told him. And she says, look, I didn't tell you because I know you have a jealous streak. Good thing for the police, though. She's still got the latest message on the machine.
With your hot little body, tonight I'm going to have you. Going to hold you down in your own bed and kiss that fantastic body of yours. From the top of your head to the tips of your toes. I'll make you beg for more. And when you do, I'll move slowly up your legs and... Stop it!
Thomerson powers activate!
As you can see, Foster's not happy about this message, and not for the right reasons, not because he's concerned for her, but because he's jealous that someone will fuck her better than he will.
Could you read this answering machine tape any worse?
I want your hot little body.
It's so...
I'll kiss you from your toes to your
from
head.
the tip of your toes.
He smacks before the start of each... Yeah, it's just really...
You guys weren't turned on at all?
A little,
I mean,
but...
yeah.
I like how the tip of your head, I will kiss you atop the head to start our foreplay.
Just a little right on the top. Little cherry on the top.
So upon hearing that incredible voicemail, Foster and Callie do agree that it actually does sound like Mark. So this kind of works for Chris and Rita. They think, okay, well, we've got a lead, and they're satisfied for now. They'll look into Mark. Further questioning from Rita about their activities forces Callie to admit they do like to dress up and play night games.
Ooh.
My favorite part of this is she goes, well, we like to dress up and you know, when we make love. Make love is one of my favorite phrases that people use in shows like this. But, and she goes, is that against the law? And Chris is, no, baby. Tell me a little bit more about them night games.
And that is kind of the thing, is they need to know more about the night games practically, but who wants to talk
It gets real
with
awkward.
cops about their night games?
Yeah, it gets real awkward real fast. So the cops kind of get what they need and they go.
Oh, and Tim Thomerson's like, well, it was your idea, so you tell them about the night games.
Doesn't he also kind of get mad at Chris and Rita, like, you sickos want to hear about my night games?
I think he gets mad at everybody through the entire episode.
Sure doesn't have a good head on that shoulders, those shoulders.
That big meaty head.
Which I've seen be
He's
much
so-
smaller in different films.
He's so puffed up by this point. My God.
You could not put this Tim Thomerson in your pocket.
It's time for Chris and Rita to look into Mark. They're at his house, which is interesting looking. I didn't make exact notes, but I remember being kind of like, this is a weird looking living room. That
I
they're
guess he is
searching
an
for.
architect.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably tasteful. He's supposed to be a master architect, so who am I to question it?
After he broke off from the Shield, of course.
All we learned from the
At
cursory...
least he's not a lunatic.
All we learned from the cursory search of the living room is that he's really good at shooting guns and collecting dirty magazines. That's about all they can find here.
He's super into target practice and has every issue of Bottoms Up.
Is that what it was called?
Yes.
And that is the dirty magazine, I'm assuming, right?
I mean,
I was
have
thinking
to,
it
is
was
it
smut.
real?
I don't know.
Probably not real. But yeah, I think I have to assume it's a butt-centric porn magazine of some sort.
I would think so. Yeah, I was. The implication seemed to be that he was a perv who was really good at shooting bullseyes. That's about all they found out. You know, it doesn't look like they're turning up much here, but there's something really fortunate about this show, which is once again that they never have to worry about a dead end.
It comes to them when they need help.
No
as
dead
they're
ends,
searching-
only dead people.
As they're searching, Mark's friend Billy comes along, innocently knocking on the door. And Chris greets him by telling him Mark is dead. It's one of his usual
It's
tactful
immediately.
things.
He's like, hey,
hello, Mark is dead.
is Mark here? Oh, you know where the fuck he is? The morgue.
6 feet in the fucking ground, you melted looking Mark Ruffalo fucker.
Did you do it?
Billy tells a little bit about he and Mark. They met at a gun shop that Billy works at.
That's always a friendship that's built to last.
I mean, all my friends at gun shops.
All my friends are guns.
So Chris questions. Chris questions about Mark's personal life since Billy seems to know him so well.
Doesn't ask him anything about why his whole wardrobe is very pastel.
And Billy knows, he knows a little bit about him. He knows he didn't really have any girlfriends, but he was into one spicy meatball.
That's verbatim, in case you thought Spencer was full of shit.
There's another one, too, coming up, which I'm sure you'll get
I may
to.
have missed that one. We'll see. All that Billy can remember is that one, the spicy meatball, and she came to see him once. He gives a basic description, and Chris and Rita are pretty clear. This sounds like Callie. Now, if you guys know the basic description, please tell me because I did not write it down.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say just the very first part of it. He's been eyeballing Callie hard enough to know that she is exactly 5 feet 6 inches tall. Van, what's the other part?
The only other part I remember is that he has double-fisted appreciation for her.
Wait,
What does that mean?
I don't know, but
Boobs.
well, it means that also there's another part I did remember then.
It always means boobs.
Which is that she had a set of jugs that could knock your pockets out.
That's right. Oh,
that doesn't
yeah.
sound desirable, but okay.
I know. I like my pockets.
Actually, when watching
Does
this,
he stuff? Hold on. I just have to. When he makes love to a woman, does he say, "Hey, get on your knees, baby"? And then she's like, "Oh, I see where this is going." And then he's like, "Stuff your breasts in my pockets."
That's one of their night games.
Until they come out.
One of their dirtiest night games.
and I texted Brian when watching this episode, I was like, I saw so many boobs tonight that my pockets just blasted right out.
You saw so many sides and back portions of boobs. I don't know. Weird show.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack already in this one. Chris and Rita have to kind of get into what they've learned so far, and this is one of those times they do it at a place that I don't really know how to describe. It looks like an outdoor cafe. They're at a table. They each have a drink. And
It's kind of like the Dr. Quinn one that they always meet at.
Yeah. It just kind of...
Finish their meatloaf.
Yeah, it's the 1800s.
It looks to me like they're pretty much on the street, and they're doing this so that they can do a little recon on Callie, who they obviously don't trust now that Billy said that she was a spicy meatball.
And who knows how many pockets she's murdered.
Yeah, there's a lot to look into here. So they're trailing her, and they're not doing very well at all. Callie just gets a bunch of presents as far as I can tell. She's going shopping, and she throws a bunch of presents in her car. She clearly sees Chris and Rita in the shopping window that she's on in the street. And they really aren't able to get anything out of this. They are spotted instantly.
Poorly pretend not to be there, like, oh.
They turn around. Yeah, it's very bad police work. This is not good evidence that Chris and Rita are very good at their job.
No, they aren't very good at it. This episode also did prove to me that big hat boxes are still a thing that women carried around after exiting a store in the 90s. I thought that would have ended decades before.
I would really enjoy shopping and leaving with that, with a big hat box.
It is it's one of those, I may have mentioned this on the podcast, but I have a little bit of a container thing, and it's a container I'd like to have, one like that. That big old hat box.
That's totally great, like vertically striped. It's got the tightly fitting lid.
It's a very handsome container, and I feel like it could fit some unique items in it.
Hats.
Yeah, like for instance, I have a lot of beanies. I feel like I could throw them all in that.
No, you need one well-formed hat that needs to keep its shape. That's what those boxes are for.
Yeah,
nothing
so it fits
else.
exactly.
Well, yeah, and it's like a gourmet hat. That's not right.
No, let's
you
go
can
with
eat
that.
that hat.
It could be a chef's hat.
I
That
don't
could
know,
fit.
like, you know what I mean.
Yeah, like a high-quality hat.
Like a good hat.
Like you spent time investigating what hats were good, and you picked out the best one and spent actual money on it.
This is a designer hat.
What's the most expensive hat you guys have bought?
like $10.
Yeah, right? Oh boy, here it comes.
I've spent a lot of money on a hat before.
A hat.
Yeah.
How much?
No, I mean, it's not like crazy. I've spent...
Have you seen my Derby collection?
I've spent $40 on a hat before.
What hat is this?
It's a Cardinals hat. It's an official...
Oh, like a nice one.
Yeah,
like at the stadium?
It's a
Okay.
baseball hat.
But what I would say to that is that's not a $40 hat. That's a hat they charge $40 for.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like you never spent money for a hat you meant to wear it to a nice place.
But I also don't own a hat I ever meant to wear to a nice
No,
place.
that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, I wear baseball hats, and no, it's a thing for some people, but for me, it will never be. I don't think it fits my personal style to wear like a big ornate hat. I would just throw on a baseball cap, if anything, but mainly I just use my hair for a hat.
Well, I'm wondering though, like, apart from like a cowboy hat and a baseball hat, what else can you do in this?
Like a fedora, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to pull off. I don't know.
Yeah, but fancy boys do it.
I wouldn't trust them.
Fancy boys.
Yeah, you've seen them around.
I
They
wouldn't
do
trust
it.
them. I don't like it.
They're bopping around with
Yeah.
their dandiness.
Well,
I've seen people too where I'm like, okay, fine. And I've seen people where I was like, no, you look more, you have been to Taco Bell as often as I have, and you don't look like you should wear that hat.
Tips fedora.
Yeah, tips fedora.
Milady.
And then I tip my fedora to him, and he tips his back, and we both agree never to wear them again.
And then you do the Jeep hand signal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all sounds like it definitely happened.
It's a dance, is what it is.
It's like a mating ritual where there's no mating, there's only understanding never to wear that fedora again.
Okay, maybe we can take a break from the hat talk here for a bit. So let's take an actual break. When we get back, we'll continue discussing silk stockings.
Callie heads home with her hat boxes because she's got to get those things inside.
Hell yeah.
And another episode where a person who just witnessed a murder is just fine. No big deal.
No, murder we understand is kind of like jaywalking in the world of silk stockings.
Yeah, she always goes out shopping on, I believe it's Wednesdays, as we find out. We find out because Foster is waiting for her at the house when she comes home.
He's
with her
in a
hat
great
boxes.
mood.
Oh yeah, he accosts her, full on accosts her, accuses her of cheating, reminds her they have a prenup. It's a whole blow up. It's a big mess. Callie loses her shit and throws the hat boxes down.
So this is probably it. There's no way they'll make up ever.
No,
definitely not in this scene.
Definitely, yeah. She comes completely unglued, throws everything around. You know what? It's all okay though. They love each other.
Honey, I'm sorry. I love you.
Oh, I love you too, Foster. You stupid. How could I be unfaithful when I'm married to the biggest stud muffin of all time?
I can't refute this evidence.
No, it's right.
Crisis averted. That fight was very short-lived, and everything's fine. Everything's fine at the old Hinshaw house.
Did someone in this scene say the phrase, and I might be wrong.
It's probably that one I have written down. Go for it.
Does someone say the phrase horny little box boy?
Yes.
Tim Thomerson says to her, "Who am I?"
Yeah.
And she says, "A horny little box boy." As if that's a thing.
That's
They've
one of
got
their
to-
night games.
Yeah, they've got to always dress it up, so that's what happens
You
there.
be Santa, I'll be the gift.
I'm glad that you didn't let us go past that part without acknowledging it. Thank
Well,
you
I
for bringing
actually
that back
was
in.
confused at what I meant.
It's where you look at your notes later
Yeah.
and you're like, what?
Yeah,
This couldn't be real.
and it's in quotes. I knew that it had been directly said, so I figured that if anyone would have it, Van would have it.
Lust amongst the shuffle was her mentioning when he's still mad at her. She's like, wait till you see him what I bought. I bought a leather G-string. The most uncomfortable type of fabric to be wedged up your ass crack. That has to be awful.
I'm also not sure what good the material would do in seeming appealing to
Yes.
the onlooker. But I don't know.
How well made this G-string is.
In 1992 or whatever, I was not a person with sex drive yet. You could argue I'm still not.
Well, this show, if you don't have it after this show, you're not getting it. That's all I have to say. It's time to do some background on Callie, because as we can discover here, there's more to her than it seems.
I'm clapping because I'm super pumped for what's about to happen.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, we're at the police station where Rita's doing a little bit of homework, and she finds out Callie's last name used to be Flanagan. She was an upscale sex worker who moved to Palm Beach about 3 years ago. They've got a forwarding address to check out, and that'll be our next lead here. She worked for someone named Francine Rose, who employs sex workers and apparently the high-class ones. And Rita knew all about Francine from her Vice days. She used to work in that department. So we've got a lead, and it's time for Chris and Rita to check it out immediately. Francine is dining at some kind of upscale restaurant. She's obviously very classy. So that's where they find her. And this is, again, right away. There's no transition here. We're immediately talking to Francine. And they ask her about Callie. Francine says, she could really keep the men coming. She was her best girl. And then, you know what happened? She lost her when she married her best customer.
Oh, man.
Who
The
do you think
best
her
of the
best
best.
customer was?
Maybe a tiny 12-inch man that hunts down evil dolls? Could
Okay,
it
if
be
it's
him?
not that,
Mhm.
I suggest a larger man who looks like the 12-inch man, but can sort of navigate time and space whenever he wants.
Okay, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, these all seem plausible.
So this woman, Francine, I think was her name, she's apparently a recurring character.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I
So
did not.
We would have seen her to this
Okay,
point.
so she's sort of the informant, like
Yeah, that
the
makes
madam
sense.
character
Yes.
who's an informant and is sassy, probably. Hey, there's
Absolutely.
a trope character.
See, I thought that you were just supposed to go off the fact that Rita used to work in Vice, and they just take it for granted that she knew her before.
I did too, because you wouldn't have needed her to be a recurring character.
No, and she has such a short scene. This is literally the only thing she does in the entire episode. So I was kind of thrown off by that.
She does command her scene.
Oh yeah,
Every
like I
scene
said,
in
she's
Dollman is a short scene.
Yeah.
she's kind of well-to-do. She's got that demeanor about her. But for now, this information doesn't really help Chris and Rita. So they've just learned, she was a sex worker. Foster paid her for sex enough times to where she decided to just go ahead and just take his money and forever and marry him and have sex with him in that capacity instead.
I do think that in this show's world, and I'm basing this on the first episode that we covered, they view prostitution as like a moral wrong.
I think so.
And I think that's supposed to give us a character hint about Callie.
I can get behind that. That was maybe more subtle than this show traditionally does, but I do think that's true.
Because the show takes it that the viewer will understand that sex work, it makes you bad. Or whatever. Because at 30 years ago, that was the prevailing thought among anyone who's watching Silk Stalkings. Yeah, right. and still is, unfortunately.
Right. They do acknowledge, though, that it doesn't give them anything new to go on. Like, they can't work with that.
Oh, no, I'm not disputing that.
So they say like, basically back where we started or something like that. I forget how they word it, but
they're like, we already knew he was a horny little box boy.
Yeah, he was a bozo. They didn't learn. All we know for now is the investigation is stalled, and we'll just have to figure out what next lead will fall into Chris and Rita's lap. We'll have to leave that plot there for now, and that's fine because we're about to learn a different strand of the story, which is that Foster is not giving up on this whole Callie's not being faithful to me thing. Back at his construction place, he is hiring a private detective named Slater.
Who's, according to Foster, he's like, my lawyer said you're the best.
The best in the biz. Again, Foster, the best at hiring women of the night. We know that already. Callie, she's the best sex worker in the biz. And now we know that this new PI, he's the best at that.
That's true. That's a really good point.
Dream team.
Cream of the crop right here.
Doesn't look like Slater from Saved by the Bell.
Little different, yeah. He's a kind of a creepy looking guy.
How dare you?
Miss Kurtz almost seems to be flirting with him when she sends him into the room to meet Foster, which I thought was really weird.
I thought it was weird too because he shows up at Foster's office looking to meet him, kind of in his weird old leather jacket and kind of shirt with too many buttons
and looking like
undone.
he looks, and he's gross.
His hair's like weird and wiry and slicked back and stuff. He looks like he's tried to break into one of those cigarette machines. Like I don't know. And yeah, Ula
Kurtz
is into it.
She seems to be at this point. Yeah,
he looks like in those Men in Black movies when they would have people who are actually aliens. That's what he looks like.
I agree with that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm on board with Slater at this point, and just wait, we get to learn a whole
I was on board the second his visage wandered into my screen.
We get a whole hell of a lot more of Slater coming up here.
I knew we had an all-star on our hands.
Oh, yes. So the arrangement's all set between Foster and Slater to tail Callie. They've got that all worked out. The whole purpose of this scene is to establish that. Back at the police station, Captain Bob is going to work on Rita some more about taking that job. And Rita says, my partner didn't really want me to go, and we really like working together, blah, blah, blah. Captain Bob gets to drop the line here, well, if you moved to San Diego, you'd be working with me. She mentions she doesn't want to get there and get stuck with working with someone she doesn't want to work with. She likes her partner. So that's where, there's a little bit of that romance creeping back into this. Maybe there is something more than the job offer going.
She likes Chris Estes.
I think part of
Chris Lorenzo, Rob Estes. Sorry.
I think part of it is that as long as Chris is her partner, Rita will always be like the alpha cop who gets things right.
True.
There's definitely a little chemistry between her and Bob, but at the same time, she's torn because she doesn't want to leave Chris, who does interrupt this right when they're in the middle of in this conversation with work updates. So Bob relents. He says, it sounds like you're busy. I'll go. And then he snidely invites her to dinner on the way out, just so Chris gets the hint that something's happening between them in case he's interested too. He wants to stake his claim.
Yeah, a couple of men battling it out.
Yeah, that's what you do. Battle it out for the women that you've targeted.
You thump your chest afterward too.
Your gray-haired chest.
A big reveal in this scene back at the Henshaw house once again. We've got Ms. Kurtz pulling up dressed like a leprechaun. She's got that green dress. It's like the greenest dress I've ever seen. She's pulling up to the Henshaw estate, seemingly innocently. She is the secretary after all, so She could be there on business. She's pulling up as Slater clicks away furiously from his spot wherever he is, perched behind the house or behind some rock or something. It's not really that good of a hiding spot.
You just see his creepy fucking head poking up with a camera there.
Lots of clicks. Way too many pictures of Ula, if you ask me. When Callie answers the door and lets Ula in, we get our big reveal. We discover it's not a man Callie has been seeing this whole time after all, but another woman.
What? Ooh la la la.
Oh, nice. And you didn't even know her name, so you couldn't have prepared for that.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's on the spot.
Yeah, we have proof.
I did one thing good.
As they embrace in the entryway and discuss about where Foster is and how he's gone for the whole day and how they're going to have all this time to ravage each other. I'm going to use Callie's word from earlier in the show.
She's a horny little box girl.
Ula lets her know they really don't have time because Slater's outside taking pictures and that Foster hired a private eye.
In fact, we don't even have time to kiss. We just have time to kind of rub on each other.
Yep, I guess they couldn't pull that off in the rating. Is that not allowed?
They probably couldn't in the early 90s. There probably couldn't be a lesbian kiss scene.
Here's Foster's disc containing all 1 megabyte of data.
Yeah, it's a floppy disk, and it's like not even a normal sized one. It didn't look like. But
Yeah, I guess I didn't really catch what exactly they were trading there. I know she hands her something, but I don't know what that was.
It was a disc, but it was just the instigation for the two to talk. It was like, oh, Foster left this at work. He didn't, but
so
it was
wasn't
so that
even
way
anything
we could-
important. Okay, I wasn't even sure. I was like, I don't know
I
what
just
that is.
thought a floppy disk was funny.
Oh,
yeah,
that'd be great.
It is funny that she went to the trouble to be holding it out in the open for the PI to see.
Come on.
Waving it around.
Also, this PI Slater
He's so good at his job.
He is the best there is, just like Chris and Rita, and the best there is means you are always easily spotted by anyone you're tailing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it turns out he's really not very good after all. The good news is though, you know, when Callie gets this news from Ula that Foster is definitely suspicious of her and he's got someone tailing her, she's not too worried. They're both confident, in fact, that they can. She's like, you know what? You figure this out. Ula tells her, you've got this. You can outsmart that macho slug. I think at some point in this scene they call him a macho slug.
And they're referring once again to this PI.
Yeah, who is, I'm just going to say it, a small framed man he looks a little like Gollum.
I think slug is applicable.
Slug.
He does look very slug-like, I will say.
I don't think like machismo when I think slugs. I think thing that if you pour salt on it, it dies and screams.
See,
which is horrifying.
I actually thought the macho slug was a reference to Foster, but I don't remember the exact details. They're both macho slugs, so either way.
The macho slug is actually... Okay, so when Randy Macho Man Savage won the King of the Ring tournament, he was called the Macho King. Mm-hmm. Well, when he won the Slug of the Ring tournament years later, when he was much slower, he was the Macho Slug.
That does make sense. I'm glad you provided that context there.
No problem. That's what I'm here for, guys.
Miss Kurtz leaves. Callie immediately confronts Slater in his hiding spot.
Sneaks up on him.
Yeah,
gets the jump on this.
The drop.
I thought that was great too, and it's like, Callie, why don't you become a PI?
Yeah, I mean, Slater's just that bad, maybe. But yeah, she immediately finds him, and he has no idea that she's even seen him. So they cut a deal right away, which is $50,000 and sex.
Say what you will. This guy is a hell of a shrewd negotiator.
$50,000 in sex.
We'll do it for 10. And it's going to cost more than double than that. And then it just goes, and anyway,
he got all this money because he fucked his job up.
Yes. Yeah, she's like, and they land on 50 out of nowhere. She says, I'll double it. He's like, takes more than that. And then somehow it goes way up to 50. Yeah, it's like, it's not even close to that.
And then there's the finder's fee, which is,
Don't I get a sweetener or something like that? And yes.
Sweetener.
Yes, he does get a sweetener.
Now I'm a horny little box boy.
So now Slater works for Callie and will be tailing Chris and Rita. That really backfired very quickly on Foster and Chris and Rita, come to think of it. Meanwhile, Rita's at the police station, and she's working on their statements on Mark's case for Sergeant Donovan. He always wants to close the case, and he wants the information on Mark's corpse so they can get rid of that whole thing and be done with it.
We've reached the, 25-minute mark. It's Donovan. I'm here.
Donovan time.
The case needs to be worked on, guys. That seems to be a constant.
No, all right, I'm moving on. My scenes are done.
This totally is the exact same thing here. Sergeant Donovan's trying to close the case. Rita's going along with it. Chris doesn't think that it should happen that way. Chris doesn't believe Callie didn't know Mark.
Crusader Chris.
He's always thinking, we got to do something else. We got to figure out how long it takes to get between these two places. We need to crack this case wide open. So as Rita leaves with the paperwork, Callie calls Chris on cue and tells him, hey, come over. I've got some info on Mark. You can just let yourself in. I've got the gate open. Which is convenient once again.
That's
He's just
straight
saying,
up you're going to fuck me over. Every single
time I'm by the pool, the gate's open. There's
You let
nothing
yourself
weird
in.
about it.
Well, and it's the perfect timing too, because he's just sitting there talking about how I don't think Callie's telling the truth. Something's wrong there. If only I could get more information. And then there we go. She invites him over. So we have to go back to the Henshaw house once again, where Callie is actually cooking up a big deal here. This is quite the mastermind plan.
This is some Mission Impossible shit going on.
It really it really is. It's almost heist level.
And just like in Mission Impossible, what we have here is the most crack team of sleuths, investigators, and criminals.
Oh yeah. This is real time too, because when the phone call ends, we also see Callie hanging up at the Henshaw house.
Yeah.
So she
Showtime,
tells, she
Mr.
tells
Slater.
Slater it's showtime. We've also got this unidentified third person with them.
You mean the Chris Lorenzo lookalike?
Yeah, at that time, that's not what I thought. There's this young man in a suit who's standing there scowling and not saying anything with her and Slater.
I had to rewind and watch. I'm like, why is he there?
He doesn't say anything.
And
yeah,
then
you're like,
it finally hit me later. I'm like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. But initially, I was like, what the fuck is even happening?
They've like painted a little scar on his face, so you're supposed to be able to tell them apart, I think.
Oh, well, no, he's Harry Potter, the lightning bolt. That's what it was.
I thought that whole thing was very puzzling the first few minutes I watched it. I was like, why is this guy here glowering the whole time? But yeah, he's just there in the background while she and Slater talk, and it's time to put this scene into action. She puts on her most seductive bikini. Later, Foster calls it her skimpiest bikini. I prefer seductive. And she basks by the pool and waits Chris. I actually thought at this point, I thought she was going to actually try to seduce Chris. I was not.
Also was my initial
I was
thought,
not picking up that there was this big mastermind plan. I thought she was simply trying to get pictures of Chris like staring at her or being a creep because he's stupid, and he stared at the sculptor's artist in the last episode. I thought he was going to do something like that. It's already happened to him multiple times in both these episodes at this point. So yeah, you figure something like that's going to happen.
He's just a caveman of a person.
He is surprisingly professional when he gets there, and Callie is being really weird and honestly doesn't make any sense, and he acts like it doesn't make any sense because she called him and then immediately is like, "Oh, you startled me," when he comes in the backyard. And she's just very standoffish to him, won't really answer any of his questions and doesn't seem to be cooperative, which is a strange attitude to take on when you've just called and invited this person over for information.
Tries to slap him with the worst slap ever, and he just grabs a wrist.
Chris picks up on just none of this, thinks none of it is suspicious.
I'll tell you.
No, he just tells her straight up, like, one of Mark's friends saw you guys together, and that's all he really says to her. He's like, what's your deal?
And you know how in Mission Impossible they had their roles?
Yeah.
Like Martin Landau was the mask guy. He would just do whatever. Barney was the technical guy. What Chris Lorenzo's niche is on this force is figuring out how long it takes to do things.
Yes.
That's his skill.
It's
out of that element.
I like to imagine a backstory where he used to work in the transit department. They transferred him mysteriously to the sex homicide department. But so the main thing he focuses on is how long it would take to get from one place to another. And also he's really good at being like, guys, we can't let the case end here.
That's
his
very
other
good
thing.
at that.
He's stubborn.
But when it comes to the
doesn't know
actual police
why.
work, no good at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like he really has any good reason. He just won't let it go. It's not like he's got any information that no one else has. The whole point of this entire thing is we've got to get him the real Chris photograph talking with her and touching her when she tries to slap him and he grabs her arm. So they've got that part taken care of to establish his actual appearance. And then when she orders him away, now it's time for the stunt double to come on.
Oh my God.
Slap her repeatedly, jump on her, pretend to rape her, and we've got all those photos now, which is damning Chris as having done
I don't
the
know
whole
that
thing.
it's pretend.
Yeah.
Well, the Slater, the PI, he's directing what to do
Oh,
here.
yeah. Slap
taking
her
the
real
pictures.
good.
Slap
Jump
her
on
real
her.
good. Hey, get on top of her and pretend to rape her. And then she's kind of into it.
She likes
she's a
it.
crazy
Yeah,
psychopath.
I think she tells him at one point to she urges him
Actually
on.
do it. Yeah.
Well, she has that line that I'm a method actress. She says
She
that.
says that?
Yes.
I missed that.
That's
wow.
a verbatim line. So implying that get in, actually.
I would not doubt it.
Yeah.
This plan that they've cooked up together immediately comes to fruition because Slater takes those photos right away to Foster at Henshaw Construction. And he pretends to be none the wiser about this whole thing. Of course, he's saying, look, I mean, I couldn't do anything about it. I can't blow my cover, but this is what just happened to Callie. So Foster's like, what the fuck? You just
Foster's
sat there
like,
and watched her get raped and took pictures?
Foster's like, this is awful. This is awful. I'm going to go to the police and handle this responsibly and make sure that the person who did this is brought to justice and that I'm there for my wife.
Definitely.
That's how he handles
That's
it.
the rest of the
Verbatim.
episode. He's just very supportive.
Or I don't know. I actually turned the episode off at this point. That's what he does though, right?
Probably shouldn't have done that. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Some of the
But-
best parts are coming up.
Oh.
Now, Foster does recognize it's Chris, or the ones he thinks is Chris at the end there, and he's out for blood at this point. He's just fucking furious. And he's mad at Callie too, as we find out, because he bursts into his own mansion.
Well, let me point this out too. So, okay, the order of events was they take these photos. Slater goes to the 1 hour photo, develops them, takes them to Foster's work. So Foster's looking at these pictures. He's like, oh my God, he raped her. This is horrible. He goes, how could you let her do this? And the PI's like, oh, I couldn't blow my cover. So you're totally cool letting someone
Yeah, you're
rape
fine with that.
someone.
Like, I understand the unbuttoned Hawaiian shirted PI code. It's fine that you let my wife get raped.
And then, in addition to that, Foster accepts this as fine.
Yeah.
Foster's
Yeah.
like, you're right. All right, I'm going to go take care of
And
this.
then, and then he's
nuts.
mad at her.
Mhm.
And not at Slater, but at her.
He
I
should
don't
run
think
for
he's
governor of
rational.
Missouri.
We get to see just a lot more about Foster and how he handles these delicate situations as he bursts into his house. Callie's pretending to cry in the bed and lies about how her face looks like that because she wants to make him think that she doesn't want him to know. It's a long con. This is a lot of depths to this.
What did she say happened in her
I fell
lie?
in the bathtub.
Yeah, something. I just remember hearing it
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Are you not able to not do that?
I punched myself in the head with the bathtub.
This is the great part here is like Foster can't reveal that he knows unless he just gives the whole thing away, which he does.
So immediately.
He throws the photos at her and says, I know everything. Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I've got secrets too. Sometimes I change into a doll man.
So he doesn't care that reveals he hired someone and suggests it was her fault this happened in the first place. She taunted Chris, or, if she hadn't worn that skimpy bikini.
God, he's so fucking awful.
He just keeps
Everyone
going.
in this show is awful.
Yeah. Well, eventually, Callie does get him calmed down. She talks, I guess in his case, some sense into him by like, I've been through this before. I can handle it. I just didn't want to bring it to your attention, blah, blah, blah. So his anger goes back to Chris at some point here. It goes back to for him, the most logical place, I guess it can go, which is the man who raped her. And he grabs a gun and storms out.
If only he would have stopped and asked Hap Ashby what to do. Ashby could have put him on the right path, but no, instead he goes straight to where he shouldn't go.
We're going to need to have like recommended watching
Yes.
to listen to this episode of the podcast.
Because it's funny to us and no one else will understand these
Please
jokes.
first go to the Tim Thomerson IMDb page
Yeah,
and just
start
watch all
there.
of it.
We need like a Boob Tube Boys index where every reference we make has some sort of like source, some sort of citing event there where we can say how it began and what the reference is.
Someone out there, a fan out there needs to start a wiki about all of our stuff.
Yeah,
like you'll do with
I
improv shows where you add to the lore
Yeah, and
over
most
time.
of it's about Tim Thomerson.
I wouldn't-
just because of this episode.
I wouldn't say no to a wiki. That's all I've got to say about that.
Nobody turns down a wiki.
No one.
Not even a horny little box boy.
Maybe him. That is just the grossest thing
Yeah,
for some reason.
HLBB, it's a common phrase.
Hot and loud, bat boy.
At the police station, we see Chris, and he's musing once again about Callie's behavior and just kind of confused in general, which is one of his. He only has about 3 states.
That's his best one.
Yeah,
being confused.
It's probably his most common. Yeah, he also does the anger thing, and he's got his determined side and his innocent little boy side. Right now, he's just confused. Why would she act that way? She called me. She wanted me to come over, and then she got that way. That's so strange. Well, now it's time for the 2 most recent scenes to converge. Foster busts through the door, loudly accusing Chris of rape in front of the entire station. He screams he's got the pictures to prove it, which maybe that's what he should have pulled out, and maybe that would have gotten him somewhere. But no, he pulls out the gun. And, okay, in a station full of police officers that are all armed, decides he's going to shoot Chris from a distance, too. He's not even like, if he'd gone up to him and like maybe pulled it out last second, maybe he could have gotten away with this. But no, he pulls it out. He does not win that gunfight.
No, this would 100 times out of 100 end in him dying. You can just be doing anything and get killed by a cop. If you walk
into a
Roomba.
station and pull a gun out, yeah, good idea.
That's what's going to happen.
No joke. When this happened, I literally stood up and screamed, "Tim Thomerson, no!"
Was that the first time you've done that?
Not the first, not the last.
Certainly not either one of those. So there's not, this is another one of those times here. Obviously, this is a really traumatic scene for everyone, but all we get is a short cut and they're zipping up his corpse in a yellow body bag and everyone's back to work at the desks.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had a guy off the street try to shoot a cop. He got gunned down and killed in the process, and it's just another day at the office for everyone. So everyone's calmed down. They're just back to work. Donovan's not too worried. He does wonder what Foster was talking about with the pictures. He mentions that. He's like, don't worry about it, Rita. I'm glad you killed him. You had to protect your partner. What was he talking about with those pictures, though?
Anyway, I've made my second appearance, which is my quota per episode. I'll see you guys later.
And what the hell is this police station? Why is it lit like a bar?
It's quite dark. It's
dark.
And the bar was light.
And they have
places up.
They mix those up, and they have like weird like lighting. At some point, they also refer to this as the Silk Stalkings detail. And
yes, that's a thing. Rita and Chris work for a division of the whatever police department called the Silk Stalkings.
So is this like the Law and Order SVU precursor? Wow.
I see.
I totally forgot about that.
I didn't know they were specialists. But
That's
they were
right.
Generic cops. Once again, Chris wants to hold off on closing the case here. He's got another plan. You guys can guess what it is. It's the plan he always has.
Yeah, he's going to have to figure out how long it takes to get from one place to another place.
Let me get my watch.
I wish this is when I wanted to do like a little mashup of Chris Lorenzo lines. I really wanted to have all the dialogue of him talking about driving between places and just put that in there, just over each other, just one after the next.
I really wish that this one would have also included a bang bang you're dead when he turned toward the Invisible Mark character in his time trial, and then also when he turns toward the Foster character, bang bang you're just wounded.
Now, I did jump ahead of myself a little bit here. That is ultimately his plan. Let's not get confused there. But first, he does have to go tell Callie that her stud muffin's dead. So that's the first step here. So Callie fake tries and says she tried to talk him out of it. And she told him there was nothing to the rape allegations. That Chris and Rita are confused. Like, why did he even think that? And they look at the real photos and Rita observes, well, it's really, there's nothing about these that are giving off the idea of rape. That's for sure. So they're a little puzzled. They're not really buying the story, but they don't have much to go on here, so they have to leave for now. It's time to find out who took those pictures, though. Chris's next action, while they have to unwind this whole photograph mystery thing, he's gonna barge right in on Miss Kurtz and flash his badge. He's saying, hey, what's going on here? She's playing dumb. She's not gonna talk about the private eye, of course, but Chris is determined. He says, I need to know, I need to search that office. I need to figure out what's going on in there. And I'll be back with a search warrant if I have to.
My favorite part of this scene is she's a secretary or administrative assistant, whatever you want to call her. She knows the schedule. She knows who sees the boss. She knows everything about this. And Chris is like, so did anybody come in between the 1 to 3? And she goes, no one did. Well, do you even want to look at your book? It's my fucking job, you idiot. I know what happens here. I don't have to look at my book.
She is obviously a criminal and liar, but but she would know that.
Yes. And he's just
you definitely would know
antagonizing
that.
her.
Yeah.
And it's also funny here. This is one of those times that, after they have their big confrontation and she's not caught, but he's clearly suspicious of something. She does one of those things that's always funny in shows where the second he's out of the room, she picks up the phone and starts immediately calling the person that she shouldn't be calling and calling her sweetie. Like she's calling Callie and immediately talking to her about like how there's a loose end. Just as Chris could still be in the room for all we know. He might not have even gotten out the door all the way.
And it is Chris, so he might have been distracted by like a desk toy.
He's just staring out that a window like, this door isn't big enough for a door. And he climbs out the window.
What's with this clear door where outside is the wilderness?
Which is like us blindly stumbling into this break. We're going to take a short one here, and then when we get back, we will wrap up Silk Stalkings and tell you what our next show is.
Back at the police station, Chris is still hard at work, grinding through all the details and knowing that something's just not quite right. Here's where he knows, like, look, these photos were developed in a very short time frame and they were brought to Foster. How did this happen so quickly? How were they taken when I was there, developed and brought to Foster in that short of a time frame? You know what I need to do? I need to drive back and forth and figure out where there's a 1 hour lab between the office and the mansion.
That's why they call me Chrono Chris.
He's in his element here. He loves this stuff.
Does he use a motorcycle or a car? We don't know at this point.
No, unfortunately, the time isn't as important in that sense. He doesn't get to do it in different vehicles. I wish he did. I wish he took this route in a motorcycle and a car just to check.
He takes a helicopter.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Exactly, a helicopter.
They do find the photo lab very quickly, where they meet a nice mustached man in Hawaiian
Saddam
shirt.
Hussein. That's cool. He got that job at the 1 hour photo in the 90s.
And since this was very recently, the very nice mustached man clearly recalls processing the photos and says, "Hey, did you see the ones after these? They're much more pornographic." He's just casually talking about it to these cops. Chris immediately latches on to the idea that the guy made copies at this point. Just immediately is like, yeah, I bet you get a whole lot of pornographic photos in here. Bet you like to make copies.
Yeah, you sick fucking perv, and I guarantee I'm right. I'm being so aggressive.
He's got no reason to jump to that, but he does. And he's like, you make copies. If you don't give me those copies, we'll come back here and we'll search this whole place. And it's just a huge threat. Out of nowhere, Chris, he likes to kind of leap off ledges and take chances.
And then threaten a search warrant when nothing happens.
Katie made me laugh when we were watching this. She goes, you usually catch more flies with honey.
Chris doesn't know that. He only has the one straightforward attack. It does work, though. The man does comply. He's got the photos, and they get the imprint of the credit card used to pay for him, too. So Slater has officially been found.
Do you think in the 90s or 80s or whatever, it was easier to do that kind of police work? Obviously, this isn't real, but if you tried that now and the 1 hour photo guy complied, that's not going to be usable in court. You coerce them for it.
Yeah, it'd be like totally inadmissible.
You would have to get the search warrant. Do you think it was just easier back then to just be mean to everybody and get what you wanted?
Yeah, that part was definitely easier, but I think it was easier to do all of it. It was easier to be a cop because people would be like, yeah, he's one of the boys. It's okay. He punched that guy. And it was easier to be a criminal because everybody would just be like, how would you know I did it? You physically didn't see it, and we don't even know what DNA is.
Outside the lab with the photos, they've got it all pieced together. They figure out Slater is clearly working for Callie at this point. Callie's setting up her insanely jealous, crazy husband. And the next step is to find Slater. And they've got the address, so that's a lead they can immediately follow up on. In Slater's office, something's already happening there. And this is
something sure does happen.
This is quite a scene.
We learn a lot in this scene.
Chris and Rita have not yet arrived, but they will be shortly. They're on the way because they've got this whole thing unraveled at this point. Callie's already there, rewarding Slater for a job that he did very well.
And he is delighted.
This is a very good scene. And she calls him Slater, and he doesn't want her to call her that. He thinks she should call him by his real name, Van. She thinks Van's a very nice name.
First, I'm going to do a nice slow strip for you. See, I told you I'd show you my appreciation, Mr. Slater.
Call me Van.
Van. What a nice name.
It is. It is. So, okay, here.
Oh, man, you are in elite company,
Here's
sir.
what it is.
Uh-huh.
We had Spence and King and Queens, a.k.a.
Yes,
Spencer.
yeah.
You've got Patton Oswalt. That's pretty cool.
Sure.
We like Patton Oswalt. Yeah. We had several little boys.
So
named Brian.
many little boy Bryans.
So you've had your representation. Yeah. I finally get a Van.
You
and
do.
Who is it?
The big is total sleazebag.
The creepiest motherfucker we've seen on this show.
But the best PI there is. Now, we don't see that in this episode.
No, he's actually the worst possible one in this show.
Not even, I don't think he's ever done it before.
So who got off the worst in this? It's me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
probably. Although some of those Bryans were pretty insufferable.
That little cowboy boy beat up that other kid.
And let's face it, we're all a little jealous of Cowboy Boy Brian because he got the closest to Birdman.
And the other Brian was the closest to Alf. So.
That's true.
Wow, you got off great.
Things are going well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd still like to. I'd like to consider the Patton Oswalt thing the highest compliment.
Maybe, but you do have to live with Doug's cousin Danny.
That's more of a Van pet peeve than
That's
mine.
true. That's true.
I mean, I'm not sure I'd like it either.
There's no puppets in that house either.
There are puppets in that house. There's no fucking way. There's a puppet for every Star Trek character. There's a puppet for like every animal they've ever encountered.
Yeah, that actually is one of my favorite Boob Tube Boys line there. There are puppets in that house. Just leave it there out of context too. So the sex game that Van and Callie are playing starts to get a little kinky because she pulls out a gun, cuffs him to the chair.
Just the way us Vans like it.
Games.
Yeah, she's doing a little bit of her night games that she and Foster do.
He's there like, yeah, cuff me while I'm in my Bill Cosby sweater.
She's got another plan too. She's gonna actually make it even more exciting and bring in Ula.
Yes, you've been duplicitous this entire time to everyone you've dealt with, but go ahead and cuff my hands.
He's the best. He knows. He would figure it out.
This is how people named Van are.
Ula and Callie standing shoulder to shoulder with their guns pointed at him is the big, I guess, the climactic scene in this whole episode. They're about to shoot him. This is Callie's fantasy, she tells him, is I've never shot a man. I've never killed a man. So they're just staring him down kind of awkwardly. They're about to kill Van. He's starting to get a little scared. He's starting to believe that this is going to happen.
She also says, I just love a big fat gun.
Only after saying, you are standing up, aren't you?
Oh yeah, that's
Yes.
at the initial stages when she's first talking dirty to him. Yeah. Do you think she means that he has an erection?
No.
What are you talking about? I'm
Oh.
still trying to figure out what Birdman was about.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. I was thinking that it's
Just a quirky guy.
it's probably going to end up the same way that it
Quirky
did in the
guy with a
backyard.
penchant for getting up with the sunrise.
Likes to whistle. No big deal.
Well, at least you didn't. The drink stayed in this time.
I know better.
Thankfully, we don't have to see a van get shot. I mean, obviously, our van's in no danger of that, but this one was. And
Well, Brian gets mad sometimes.
Yeah.
both of these beautiful babes are under arrest.
Van and Callie, of course. That's who you're referring to.
Yeah, they're going to let Ula off. She's clearly innocent. In the interrogation rooms, Callie's boasting about how she can seduce anyone she's ever tried. This is also the second interrogation room, by the way, where we've got the person who's getting interrogated that can do nothing other than just kind of brag about themselves and talk
She's
about
really
things.
into what she was able to accomplish.
Mm.
And it's like a 4-minute exposition here. I remember thinking just like, wow, she's really going to town with this whole tale.
And she-
Spinning a yarn.
She is right about one thing, though, how she looks at Chris. She says, I didn't think of that with you. I should have had you do all the dirty work. I could have seduced you. And he's like, wouldn't have worked. Wouldn't have gone
Yeah,
for it. It's like,
nuh-uh.
yeah, sure, Chris. I'm absolutely sure she couldn't have outsmarted you.
I'm better at time than you.
Yeah, Chris, you saw a model being sculpted and your fucking jaw fell out of your face onto the ground. I'm pretty sure it would have worked.
What does he actually say? He's like, no way. I see your colors or something like that.
Yeah,
I see
something like that.
I know your type or something like that.
Which would be ironic if he said, I see your colors, because he's dressed like a hot dog right now.
Yeah, what color wouldn't she see? He's worn every one there is.
And his
sometimes
tie-
at once.
His tie is this like Aztec
Yeah.
sunset. This whole outfit is my favorite of all the Chris
Ugh.
outfits, which, by the way, he must change 6 times a day.
Yeah.
Because every different scene,
It's
even
Miami,
if
it
20
is
minutes
hot.
later, yeah, he's sweaty.
He's sweating
changing.
through his neon suits.
We get a brief explanation, although it's pretty lazily written and doesn't go much, but we get a little brief explanation here as to why Callie's the way she is. Men are awful. They all do terrible things to her. Her dad was like that. You get a brief reference to it. It's not much, but it's, clearly her father was an abusive, horrible person who abused her growing up, and she became the way she is.
And
Meg?
men put on big, important fronts, she says, which that's true. And then we have ugly hands. That's
Big
true, too.
Tim Thomerson.
Those
fronts.
I do like that writing, actually, the ugly hands thing. That almost has like a noir type
Yes, it does.
feel to
Yeah.
it. That's actually pretty good. Like that little one-off dialogue where she's kind of looking off into the distance and saying this quietly. But this is the background on Callie and why this is as much closure as we're getting on why Callie is the way she is, because ultimately she didn't seem to have any reason to do any of this. The whole plan was to seduce Mark and trick him into killing Foster so she could get his money. The fun part, though, was that either one could have killed each other in the process of
Yeah, she
Mark
didn't
coming
care.
over. She did not care.
She gets rid of one of them no matter what.
But
Yeah.
my thought is, if she was trying to get Foster killed to get the money and it didn't work, I guess she figures she'd just seduce someone else to kill Foster. I don't know.
She'd still have that Tim Thomerson bod to ravage every night.
I would think she would want to get the money first and then keep seducing
Yeah,
people.
that does kind of undo her plan, because it's not like she's going to get the money when Tim Thomerson goes to jail, unless he dollmans himself so small he can get between the bars.
Do you think that maybe this wasn't planned out as well as we thought?
I think maybe she's just so
I don't
dead.
know.
in-
This is like a good writing team, obviously.
She just doesn't care. She doesn't have feelings for men, that she doesn't see them as people, so she just doesn't care who dies at this point.
They're not people.
She finishes...
As one.
We're not
A
people.
man, not a person.
She finishes this scene with asking if anyone's got a cigarette. That's what her focus is on. She doesn't care about this whole situation. Just give her a cigarette.
Total psychopath.
That is all we get about Callie. There's not. I said that's all the closure we get, and I really am sensing that, because I feel like we don't get really an ending to her. That's just that. She's heartless. She's crazy, and that's the end of her story, and that's the end of the case. We do get one last heartwarming scene once again, because they seem to do that in Silk Stalkings. This is later on, still at the police station. Chris walks in on Bob and Rita again. Every time Bob and Rita talk, Chris is right around the corner, if you guys notice.
Leering.
So this case, Bob and Rita have progressed in their relationship, and they're full on kissing each other.
Ooh.
They're agreeing to meet in San Diego, which is alarming for Chris. That's the thing he didn't want. He didn't want her to take that job, and that's how he takes it. He's like, so you are taking the job. She says, no, I'm not taking the job. I'm staying. It's just, I turned down the job, just not Bob. She doesn't say that, but
Who could turn down Bob?
that's the insinuation, is that
What about Bob?
What about Bob?
She is going to date Bob. She's just not moving to San Diego. Chris and Rita get a nice hug, and the episode ends. And that is,
Aw.
yeah, it's a lovely, uplifting ending to a very, very disturbing episode in so many ways.
You got to have that in between your smut. I almost said slut.
Yeah, from your sweaty bods.
Wow, that one was interesting to recap. I obviously, Tim Thomerson made it no matter what the rest of it was.
Absolutely.
The bravado on that man.
I guess if we look between the two of these, do you guys have a clear preference? Not counting Tim Thomerson.
They both have their benefits as far as just the goofiness that we watched. If I want to look at this objectively and say which was the better plot or the better acted or any
The
of
better
that,
plot.
I don't have an answer, because they were both just terrible in that regard. Stephen Cannell, who again created this series, has a niche. He sticks to it, and I think he does it well.
Yeah, he says, what if you made TV that didn't have to be good?
I'll tell you a couple of things I liked about each one, because I didn't really get into it the first one. The first one had a few elements that I actually liked. I did like the tying together the beginning and end with the voiceover when there were scenes going on, like the beginnings. I forget what happens on screen, but they do the voiceover at the beginning, they do the voiceover at the end when Chris is driving between the two places. And I thought there were some elements of it that I didn't mind. They kind of surprised me in that it wasn't as stupid as I was expecting it to be. The second one, that line that I had forgotten that Brian mentioned, the ugly hands thing, that is actually pretty good. And I thought that Callie was pretty resourceful when her back was against the wall, when she realized Foster's got a private eye on her. I thought that she was actually, thinking on her feet pretty well and trying to get out of that situation.
I think Callie was one of the more interesting characters in these two episodes, because she was just totally bonkers, doing whatever to make her little plan work, and the plan didn't even seem to be solidified by the end of it. It was just kind of mayhem for the sake of it.
She's fluid in her thinking.
Yeah, so the second one
She's
thought
the opposite of Chris.
had that element plus the Tim Thomerson element, which
Tim
I know
Thomerson.
we're not supposed to count, but
Tim
all
Thomerson.
in all, that episode I think was probably more fun in a certain sense. I guess what I'll say about the show is I thought it was a lot of dumb fun
It is
for the
dumb
most
fun.
part, and moves really fast. There's a lot of shows like this fall into the boring trap because they hit a midsection lull of trying to maybe, I don't know, like make us get to know characters better. You don't need to do that with Silk Stalkings. It's all about a few glistening bodies, a guest star, neon clothes, murder, some saxophone, things like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
To Callie, that point that you made, Brian, what I think that they actually did a good job doing is presenting her, and I said it jokingly, as a psychopath, when you hear stories of like serial killers, like
Yeah.
Ted Bundy or whatever, they start out as maybe cautious, but by the time they get caught,
yeah.
they're
They don't
so
care.
confident in themselves that that even when they get caught, they're like, touche, you caught me, the mastermind. So they don't even think about how they screwed up at all.
Or Ted Bundy, who you brought up, is a perfect point, who escaped out of prison several times, and on one of those, his final escape, he immediately went to Florida and murdered several people. And what didn't even try to cover it up.
So I think they nailed that perfectly
Yeah, they
with her
did.
character. I do think the second one was more fun for the reasons you gave, but that first one was a lot of fun too.
It was.
Just
And-
because of chewing up all the scenery of that
And
guy.
Rita chewed up that oatmeal cream pie. That was
She
my
sure did.
favorite
Sure did,
part.
half of it.
I love that part.
I
Well,
really
half
think
in, half now.
I really think that they did a good job with their guest casting on these episodes, at least at getting character actors who were willing to go the extra mile in Roger Bumpass and Tim Thomerson.
Yeah, those were definitely the key to both of them, the villains, so to speak. Even though they were, terribly etched out, like there's no depth to the villains whatsoever.
No.
But it did its part. It played right into the dumb part of it, the dumb fun part of it. For some reason, I didn't mind watching them. I can't really explain it. I'm not going to watch them on my own.
Certainly not, but these were, for the hour-long shows, these were for some reason really, I've used this word before to describe shows, but these are very breezy. They just kind of slip off you.
You don't find yourself like staring,
No.
drifting off in your brain. You're
Yeah,
like, oh,
and I
it
wasn't on
happens
my
quickly
phone a
enough.
lot or anything.
Mhm.
I was just watching it because I was like, what is this?
Mhm.
There were a lot of just ridiculous over-the-top scenes that make you laugh, and it helps that Chris was almost just ridiculous the entire time through. Pretty much everything
Yeah.
he did.
Mhm.
And even looking at him with the like orange suits and stuff.
And the hair.
Yeah, the ties.
Yeah, I think Chris and Rita, for different reasons, were very likable characters.
I agree.
Very
I
different
really
reasons.
do.
I can see why it would not be worth trying to get invested in those two leads they replaced him with. If you did like the show, I would be very upset to see that they replaced those two with like the people that were in roughly half of the ones that they were in.
And what you pointed out too, Chris and Rita, they are likable for some reason, and they do have some sort of on-screen chemistry.
I agree. They do.
I don't know why,
I
but
don't
it is
either.
there.
No, I think I forget her name. Rita, the actress who played Rita seems like a perfectly capable actress. She's not great, but she's better than what's his name? Rob.
She's
Rob
got
Estes
a
and
real
Mitzi
good
Capture.
Yeah, Mitzi Capture has a real good smart-ass
Capture.
face.
Mhm.
Or a real good, like, come on,
And we were
man.
talking about this off the set, so to speak, but she has a little bit of resemblance to Carrie Russell, which is what makes me possibly like her also because I do like Carrie Russell. I think we've covered Silk Stalkings, honestly. I'm a little exhausted with it. We did an exhaustive job talking about all these characters, and when you talk about Tim Thomerson this long, you get a little excited anyway. So that's enough for this show. We're going to move on to our next, and we actually have something a little different planned for you guys that we're very excited about. We've been planning this for a while, but it got delayed for reasons we can get into here shortly. But we have been looking for a show that we can all cover in one fell swoop and each take a turn at it instead of rotating shows where mostly just the host has the knowledge on it, or in some cases, one of the other ones who's not hosting has the knowledge. We've picked one that we all know quite a bit about, and some of our listeners will certainly know quite a bit about.
What's the deal with that?
Yeah, there's the little.
What's the deal?
Now that you guys have given the very subtle hints.
Subtle.
One of us was somewhat subtle.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
It was.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So guys, we're gonna do Seinfeld. We're all gonna pick.
What?
So we're each gonna be picking an episode we want to host and cover, and we're just gonna roll these all out in 1 week. So we're gonna do it a little differently. I'll be doing one. Brian will do one. Van will do one. We're gonna release these rapid fire. You're gonna get a whole Seinfeld week, and we'll do one that kind of gives an overview of the show for anyone who's listening who doesn't know about it. I'm sure there is somebody who fits that description.
I'm sure we'll have some personal anecdotes. We're known to do that from time to time.
Are we?
No, but it sounded good.
I mean, I could tell an anecdote here and there. I've been known to.
You've done it.
I love stories.
Yeah.
I'm quite the story. I'm a yarn spinner.
Second time
I
that's
just
come
kept
up.
going.
Yarn spinner. I love it.
I love yarn spinning. Okay,
I'm a yarn salesman.
without any more explanation on this very convoluted process that we've been planning for, I think, months at this point. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's actually how the second round of giving each other shows happened. The hot potato round.
Yeah, Seinfeld was not available anywhere at that time. It was in between. It was in between stations, so to speak. So my episode is
Stuck Between Stations, if you will.
Yeah, it's a great song. My episode that I picked was season 8, episode 8, The Chicken Roaster. And the synopsis of this wonderful episode, which is in the post-Larry David era, Kenny Rogers Roasters sets up shop across the street from Jerry and Kramer's apartment. Unfortunately, their unusually large chicken sign causes problems for everybody. Kramer and Jerry wind up switching apartments because of it.
Mr. Marbles?
Yeah, I just really can't wait. This is actually like my dad's favorite episode, but I also enjoy it, and I know he's going to love hearing me talk about it. So
This is going to be a lot of fun.
I couldn't resist.
We all know these. We all, before we've even started covering them for the show, we all know all of these episodes intimately. So.
Yeah, and I've probably seen that one like probably 5-10 times, so I know all about it. What are you guys going to do?
All right. Well, I have a little episode from season 5. It's episode 14 called The Marine Biologist. I'll give you the synopsis. George starts dating a college friend who, thanks to Jerry, thinks George is now a marine biologist. Elaine's electronic organizer injures a person after being launched from a limo by a Russian novelist, and Kramer decides to go golfing on the beach. And those are our plots that we have to work with. By this point, Seinfeld has hit its stride with just, they're not really willing to give you a normal plot, and I love that.
And I think, I'll say this really quickly, that the Seinfeld post-Larry David era got goofy, but did it in the right way, because there's jumping the shark, and then there's them getting goofy for the sake of, we've run out of stuff to do, let's do something like this, but keep it grounded in reality, and I think they did it well.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about, especially in our more general Seinfeld episode that we lead off with when covering the show, but man, I think that era of the show is unfairly maligned sometimes.
Agreed, 100%. And in fact, I will be giving you season 8. So
Whoa,
again,
2.
Wait.
I have the
Post
only
Larry
Larry David written episode.
Mm-hmm. Season 8, episode 3, The Bizarro Jerry.
Oh, that's
yes.
a great one.
Here's the thing about mine. My favorite plot point of this episode is not the titled plot point. I like the Bizarro Jerry storyline. However, I'll read it. George uses Susan's death to pick up women. Elaine's new friend is Jerry's exact opposite. Here's my favorite part. Jerry's new girlfriend has manly hands. And Kramer pretends to work for an upscale firm. I love the man hands, and to me, this is the man hands episode, and that's why I picked it.
There are a lot of things in remembering all 3 of these episodes that I'm now thinking about, because one thing about Seinfeld is there is a lot packed in to each episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is going to be really exciting. I was really disappointed that we couldn't do this sooner. So time has come. We've earned it from all this waiting, and we're looking forward to delivering this content to you, and it will be happening right away next week. That's going to wrap it up for now, though. I hope that you guys are as excited to hear this as we are to do it. Yeah, that.
I mean, that works, yeah.
You leave that in just the way it is. I don't want that changed. So we're going to sign off for now. I'm Spencer Hendricks. You can find me on Twitter at @3 French_hen. You can find Brian Vaughn at Loud Guitar Brian. You can find Van Lee at Manly Van Lee. You can find Boob Tube Boys on Twitter at Boob Tube Boys. That's the same thing we are on Instagram as well. And boobtubeboys.com. If you really are enjoying this and you haven't already subscribed to Patreon, please do. We would really appreciate it. And we'll make some great bonus content for you that you'll enjoy. Go to, what's the website again?
Patreon.com/Bootu Inc.
Go to patreon.com/Bootu Inc., just like Van said. You can also find that link at boobtubeboys.com if you're lazy and think that website sounds difficult to remember.
That's what I would do.
You are a listener. You are fucking lazy.
Yeah, get up off your couch and watch some Silk Stalkings.
Oh,
or
definitely.
Or Seinfeld.
And don't forget that everything Van says right now, he's saying is bump ass. So I'm still looking at the ponytail, and when he says you're lazy and grits his teeth, I get kind of scared, because it reminds me of the demonic scene that we talked about last week.
And I'm about to murder someone. Katie better be worried.
You might be. Thank you guys for listening. It's been a joy talking to you about Silk Stalkings, and an even better joy that we don't have to do it again.